Your drinking is not who you are. It's a behavior. It's not an identity. Unless like grabbing onto a label like I'm an alcoholic is actually serving you, don't be forced into that box to try and define that, because the label's not going to get you there. That
Right.
the mindset and the focus and the path to get there is what I believe is more important.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to Running Free. I'm your host, Jesse Karajat. Got a special guest here, long time coming, Mike Hardenbrook. How you doing, Mike?
Hey, Justy, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. I was trying to think back. So I was a guest on your show with Sunnyside, and I was trying to look back at how long ago that was. Do you know how long ago that was?
Man, I feel like it's got to be close to a year.
It
You
was.
know?
It was about a year,
Yeah.
and I'm looking at you, and I'm like,
I
man,
remember I did it in a hotel room. That's all, because,
did
we
you?
travel around, we're nomadic, and I just sort of remember having so many problems trying to find a place that didn't have a bed in the background.
And now you are in your home in Colorado, right?
That's right. Our new home in Colorado, in North Denver, South Boulder, whatever you want to say, Broomfield area.
So you got a lot of coals in the fire, as they say. My labels for you, just from knowing you and looking you up, right? Entrepreneur, author, content creator. That's what I'm calling you. And fitness and mental health advocate. The mission that you find yourself investing a lot of your energy in specifically is around helping people overcome alcohol use disorder. Your new company, supplement company, Cloud9, has a lot of awesome supplements that do that. But can you just share a little bit about why that particular mission is important to you?
That mission is really important to me because of all the struggles that I went through. And so the way that all started was I started writing for myself in a journal, and that actually ended up becoming a book. And I never planned on publishing it, but about halfway through writing this thing longhand, just to explore myself and what happened and what changed, I thought, there has to be somebody else just like me that is exactly where I was before. And if I can give them a shortcut and a higher likelihood of success, then I owe it to that one person to finish this book, which then continued on to the other work that I'm doing today. And it's always about just there's that one person out there that was maybe not like me in any sense from the outside looking in, but had the same struggles.
Yeah. How would you describe those struggles that you had with alcohol?
It was stuck in a cycle. It was wake up, from all appearances from the outside looking in, I had everything together. And in many ways I did, but I had this one aspect of my life that affected many others. Uh, I didn't have it under control, like I went through college doing like many of us do, drinking like a college student. Then I got into adulthood and I started thinking, well, I still kind of want to be that fun guy. And the only way, since I wasn't going out, I was like, well, I can still go buy something to drink and still feel like maybe I'm doing something in that way, which then turned into, well, this is really, I'm working all these entrepreneurial hours and I'm making all these mistakes because I'm young and I'm burning out, right? And the only way that I could say time to shut off was by opening that bottle of wine. And at first it was just, a couple times a week. Then it turned into every single night. And then as your tolerance goes, you can drink more. And then all of a sudden when I realized that like, hey, this is not serving me, there's so much cognitive dissonance. Like nothing aligns up to my values right now. Like I'm into fitness. I'm trying to build these $1 million businesses. I'm into my family. I eat right, I sauna, I cold plunge even before everybody was posting on Instagram about it. And, doing breath work, all these things. But this one thing didn't line up. And I felt so misaligned with my values. I felt inauthentic and I felt like I was hiding something.
Mm.
And when I tried to step out of that, I realized like, oh man, I have an issue here because it's really hard. Like I would go a couple days and then all of a sudden I'm back. My sleep sucks when I try and stop. So I just go back so that I can actually sleep. And oh, of course, we want to go out on the weekend. I don't want to be a downer, or whatever the excuse was or the reason. And then I try to make it through 30 days, and I did that a couple times. I didn't do it a lot, and it was definitely very difficult. But through complete accident, I kind of found my way out of that. And there were a couple combination things that we can talk about there, but eventually I was able to get out of that nightly wine routine and never go back. And that's been about, well, it was 2016.
2016. Good for you, man. Yeah, it's interesting to hear you say that because I relate with all of it. And how I've learned to describe my relationship with drinking is that there's been seasons. And in the first season of my drinking, unfortunately for me, probably like 14 years old to, the early 20s, right? It was using alcohol to amplify experiences, right? We all know it. Pre-gaming at a concert. How about that, right? And that's just one example. Whatever it is, college, etc. But then there was this lull where I wouldn't say I had it under control, but it was in control compared to other parts of my life, right? But then where it started to ramp up again and is the second season, when instead of using it for social events, amplifying experiences, I started very intentionally using it to turn off negative emotions, ruminating, stress, overwhelm, etc. And I found that if I just reflect on those two seasons, the one that was worse was when I was using it as, let's call it self-medication, right? And that's essentially what you described, but I find it interesting. I think that's a common pattern for people, especially as they move into corporate life, entrepreneurial life, and really what's underneath that, lots and lots of responsibility and deadlines. And then when you layer over that family, and I know you're a married man, you have multiple kids, your margin just is eviscerated. And then I found that because alcohol is and can be so effective at turning down the noise, you turn to it more and more, it snowballs. You got yourself a pretty nasty habit.
Yes, very much so. And, I'll tack on to what you said there. There's the cycle that this repeats. And I'm sure it's different for everybody, but I think some people could probably relate to this in that, okay, you wake up, you have regret. Oh, tonight's the night. Like, I'm not doing this shit anymore.
Right.
And so for me, it's almost like I wanted to punish myself. So I would get up, try to sweat this out, like go for a jog. Probably hit my gym a little bit later, try and eat right, do a green shake, whatever I could to get myself back, right? Get to work, do my responsibilities, just push through it. And by the afternoon or late evening, I'd start to feel better, start to feel more myself. And it was such a tough day. And I think to myself, you know what? It's been a tough day. I'm going to reward myself.
Exactly.
And that cycle literally repeated for over a decade. And it's tough. It's really tough. And there are a few things that I can identify. We can talk about what changed, what interrupted that, and what didn't work. And I can tell you what didn't work is that I would just make a promise and just hope and wish and rely on my own strength, because I was so strong in other areas that I thought, well, if I can push through these things and think my way out of it, why can't I do that? But the crazy thing is that I just kept doing it and trying to do the same thing, like I tonight will be different. And then it's like Groundhog Day.
Yeah. Yeah. You used the word misalignment earlier. I'm going to double click on that real quick. And then I do want to learn all about how you eventually broke the cycle. But when I hear misalignment, what it reminds me of is, at a time where I was really successful in my career. If you just looked at a picture of me with my family and learned a little about me, you'd think like, oh, that guy's got it under control, right? And I can remember times when, I'd put on I like to call it like my clown suit, go to work, like with my costume, my work costume. And I'd be standing up in front of dozens of people giving these, if I'm being not humble, like really good presentations. And people would, hit me up on the side and say, Jesse, like, dude, you're really good at this, like, et cetera. I get all this affirmation in that realm. And then I go to church with my family and just put on, everything's got together. And then there'd be times when I'm like sitting up at night, drunk at 11:30, watching some stupid thing on YouTube. And I would feel like an imposter. I felt like a fraud. It felt like I was putting on this performance in all these other areas of my life. But in like the real private moments, I was drinking alcohol because I just couldn't, I don't want to use negative language, right? But I just couldn't cope with all the pressure, waking up hungover, grumpy to my kids, and I just started to grow this like fraudulent feeling about myself.
Yes.
And the whole thing was like, how do I just learn how to cope with life? Maybe that means do less things and focus less on certain things. But that fraudulent feeling just ate away and ate away and ate away to the point where there was shame. And that's an important word, shame. And I don't think people
Yeah.
talk about the shame part of it enough, honestly.
Absolutely. And one point to what you're saying that comes up, it's a little bit off topic, but not really, that we're talking about, and that is like all appearances outside, it looked good, you're fit and all these things. Same with me. Now, I don't want to like disconnect from some people, but the people that the things that you see out there, like the transformation, the side by side photos, that's amazing. But there are so many people that you could look those side by side photos and you really wouldn't see a massive physical difference.
Hmm.
And I think that gets a lot of people stuck in a couple ways. Number one is they might look at themselves and then compare to somebody else and say, well, it must not be that big of a problem. For me, I already knew it was a problem. I didn't need convincing of that. But also, you look at people also that you model after, like maybe you go to a party and you're like, why does Johnny over there, he can have that drink in his hand, he's got it together, why can't I be like that? Well, you don't know if Johnny's going to go home and slam a bottle of Johnny Walker,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you would never know by looking at him. So I think like comparison or perceived what a problem would look like, I think people need to, like, if they have that, take that out of their head.
Yeah, don't judge a book by the cover, and the cover is what you see Johnny at the party doing. And when he goes home, he could be a completely different person. But
I
I mean,
could I could have a drink and be totally like chill in social situations, and then I'd like not have that capacity for control in at home.
yeah. And when you were, I'll just use this phrase, but like when you were in the depths of your drinking, maybe when you had that cycle happen over and over, you're a decade in, was it was the problem, if you will, was it your drinking frequency? Was it the intensity, like binge drinking, or was it intermittently a combination of both?
I'd probably say it was pretty regular, and it was pretty much the same amount that mounted. So I never drank during the day. I never drank in the morning. I always got my stuff done. And I generally, yeah, I'd say binge drink. I drank wine in the evening. I could easily polish off a bottle and a half of wine very fast, sometimes two,
Yeah.
and sometimes less, of course. And there were, of course, like when I had early responsibilities, those days were different, but by and large, I was my own boss, so I had very little accountability to somebody else. I was accountable to myself, and I let myself down a lot.
Look, 1 in 10 Americans today struggle with alcohol use disorder, and I was one of them. Did you know that there is a safe, science backed daily pill that you can take to drink less or even quit alcohol for good? It's called naltrexone, a doctor prescribed medication that you get online, and our sponsor, Or Health, is the nation's leading provider of naltrexone. To date, Or Health has helped over 35,000 people find freedom from alcohol, and I'm proudly one of them. To get started, text STRENGTH to 710 710. Again, that's STRENGTH to 710 710 and get started on your journey to finally find freedom from alcohol. So,
Yeah.
sounds like for about a decade, you're doing this rinse repeat, right? I
Yep.
shouldn't have done that. I'm going to do better. I'm going to use grit and willpower. But then finally, something stuck. What worked for you? How'd you do it? How'd you break the cycle?
Yeah. So the sequence went a little bit like this. So I was big into mountain biking, and at this time I was actually trying to make adjustments on my own. And one of the things I did was commit to like, I'm going to compete in mountain biking. I'm going to get good to it. And there were groups that met early, and so I started saying I'm going to be there at 6 a.m. on a Saturday, right? And so that was the first step. And then one of the people that I mountain biked with was a friend of mine who actually happened to be my naturopathic doctor, and he also worked in a substance abuse program as a consultant on the medication treatments and supplementation. And he was like, "Well, listen, if you're going to take a break, there are things that you can do that can help you support your body. It'll recover faster. It's going to make you less stressed and sleep better, because sleep was always a big issue when I'd stop. So he gave me those supplements. So I took those and I went off on my 30-day quest, and I actually got there. And so I got to the 30 days, and normally I go right, okay, I made it, things should be different. I read the habit books on, 30 days and you can change. The astronauts, were able to do conclave glasses upside down. It took them 30 days to adjust, but it never worked, right? And so I remember pumping gas at a gas station, just sitting there with my own thoughts. My wife was in the car, and I thought, why don't I go to 60 days? That was my 30-day thing, And I leaned in the window and I said, hey, I'm going to go 60 days. She's like, do it. And so I did. And that second 30 days was easier, right? And so I got to the 60 days and I said, I'm going to go 90 days. So I went 90 days, and that was even easier than the 60-day mark. I went just short of a year. I didn't count days or anything beyond the 90. I sort of knew, generally what it was, but I was just doing really good. My new habits were on autopilot. My nightly drinking wasn't there. And that's sort of like after a while, and everything started to flow to me. Like abundance, I've always been a believer in metaphysical things, but this was just so obvious. Like all of a sudden got a new position, was paid more than I've ever been paid. I just felt like everything was going my way, and it just seems like no coincidence. And that's when I started thinking, I'm really fascinated to know, like, why did I struggle for 10 years and then all of a sudden, like, here I am.
Right.
And the big reason I wanted to answer that was because I felt so alone at the time of change. I didn't mention, I did all the typical things. Google, am I an alcoholic? Take the
Yeah.
quiz. I explored even going to a meeting, and I just like something about admitting that I was powerless. Something about like it wasn't for me. I mean, I think it's amazing. It works for people. It wasn't for me, and that's just how I saw it. And at that time, this whole mindful drinking and soberish movement and sober curiosity, like that was the only people that talked about taking breaks were people that were seen as probably having a problem or alcoholic. And so I felt at that time like, well, okay, I didn't need that program. Something worked for me. What was it? What changed? And that's really what kind of led to the book, which then led to me working with Sunnyside, who does mindful drinking as a software company, and doing that podcast, and then writing another book and doing some mindful drinking courses, and then now with the supplement company, which was, as you probably can tell, is part of that story.
I have always thought, and especially realized since I dove into this podcast and started talking to awesome people like you, I've always thought that supplements have been drastically overlooked in the recovery journey. To me, it makes no sense that we're so quick to take supplements or vitamins and minerals and medication for anything and everything, including mental health, right? But when people are embarking on this, what can be a difficult journey of ups and downs, to start removing something like alcohol, I just think there's not enough awareness around the different supplements that you can take that can help with that journey. Of course, it is going to take effort and time, but if you can take some supplements that are good for you, no side effects, and just kind of aid in that journey, I mean, why not do it? And I love that you've started a supplement company as part of your story, because who better to do it than you? Can you talk about, however you want to start, but some science behind it, but what are some supplements that you've experimented with, or maybe, you're offering now? And if you're able to, like, and why do they work, for lack of a better question?
Yeah. Well, first of all, alcohol pretty much messes with every part of your system, like your
Right.
entire your brain, your nervous system, and everything. And because it depletes things, and almost like 90% of drinkers, it depletes things like B vitamins, which doesn't sound terrible. You're like, B vitamins, big deal, but like it is a big deal, to your mood, to your stress levels. It depletes magnesium, amino acids. It messes up with your gut, glutathione, all these things. It's going to mess with dopamine, GABA, cortisol, which are all going to drive stress and like difficulty with mood regulations and cravings, which all are going to drive behaviors, right? And so they're all linked to these things. So if you can take things that can is a counter effect to what alcohol is doing to your body, is going to lessen the impact, which then drive the repeat behaviors. And so that's really the approach, is to replenish, regulate, and rebuild. And it starts with supplementation, food, sleep, and regulating your stress. Because if you can get those under management, like I said, you're going to have a higher likelihood of success. So that's really the approach that we took. Now, there's also another really interesting supplement, and I mean, we can talk about that, but like B vitamin at its baseline, we use one called benfotiamine. And the thing about that is that it's bioavailable. Most of the B vitamins that you would get, like a B1 inside of like Walgreens, for example, is just going to go down the toilet, so to speak, with your money. And so like supplementation is great. I think just finding a good source for the supplementation is also like just as important as figuring out which ones you're going to use. Now, there's a really interesting one called kudzu. Now, kudzu has been used in Chinese medicine for thousands of years, and it's actually been clinically studied. There's been about 3 pretty well-known ones where varied groups, but most of them have a pretty serious drinking problem. And they just took the kudzu and they reported somewhere between 30 and 57% reduction in the amount they drink. So if you've ever heard about something like naltrexone, it's sort of like a natural naltrexone in that it lowers in a totally different way in the brain. It doesn't actually block the euphoric effects. The outcome is that you drink less. So that's another approach that we're taking to then aid people, because some people might want to taper off, or some people might not want to quit, but they want to drink less.
Look, life can be hard and stressful sometimes. We all know that. But when it comes to supplements, why is it that nobody talks about stress and resilience? For me, I take the adaptogen stack from Momentous Supplements. It's a daily blend of ashwagandha, rhodiola, and L-theanine, all clinically backed to help you stay calm, focused, and resilient. I'm proudly partnered with Momentous Supplements because they are the industry's best. They don't cut corners. Everything's third-party tested, used by pro athletes, and high quality. Head to livemomentous.com and use code STRENGTH for 35% off your first order. Again, that's livemomentous.com, code word STRENGTH for 35% off your first order, and get started today. I think it's awesome. Switching gears a second, labels. Okay, kind of a pivot here. You mentioned some of them earlier. Sober curious, mindful drinking, moderate drinking. There's so many out there, and then there's gray area. Can you just talk a little bit about why labels are important?
I can talk about why I think they're not important.
Better yet, why are they not important, Mike?
Because I think that people are actually looking, first of all, your drinking is not who you are. It's a behavior. It's not an identity. And you don't have to, unless it serves you, attach to an identity or a label around your behavior. So that's my take, is unless it's serving you, unless like grabbing onto a label like I'm an alcoholic is actually serving you, don't be forced into that box to try and define that. Like, do I fit in that category? Instead, I think you should focus your effort on like, what could I do today? Or what would my life look like if I could change it to exactly how I want it to be? And what are the steps that I can get there? Because the label's not going to get you there. Right. The mindset and the focus and the path to get there is what I believe is more important.
Do you have, like, if I were to ask you, how would you describe your drinking? Like, where are you today? Do you have a label or sentence, or are you just kind of like, no? But what do you mean?
The funniest thing is that I really don't even know how to define it, nor do I like to put a label or define anything, because a label, like I said, is an identity, and I think that there's a sense of permanence there. For me, my goals in life, whether it be with my career, whether it be with my fitness, are constantly moving. They're always changing. And there are times in my life where I'm going through a phase where I will not have a single drink at all. like, for example, I didn't have anything for 6 months. We went to Spain. I wanted to have some wine on the weekends. We're
Yeah.
back from Spain. I don't have anything to drink now.
I
What
love it.
do I call myself? I don't know. I like,
I love it. I love
I
it.
don't know. Am I a mindful drinker where I count my drinks? No, I don't do that. Am I mindful? Am I sober? No, I'm not that either. Who cares?
Yeah.
Like,
Amen. No, amen. I like how you put that. Like when you have a label, it's just the permanence of it, and it kind of attaches to you and it follows you around. And alcohol gets all of these labels, but I mean, alcohol is just one habit that can wreak havoc, right? I mean, there's so
yeah,
many other things. I think what's the label for you consume too much social media? What's the label for
yeah,
that?
yeah.
Because that's distracting us. That's wasting time. That's taking us away. That's killing our focus.
Or
And
eating junk food or doing all
yeah,
these other things or fast food or, like, um, but I will say, there's not a label, but I will say, like I mentioned, the mindful drinking. I am definitely mindful of how I was and where I never want to be again. And I have never gone back to that. And that was part of that. The reason people might say, why'd you take a year off? And then if you're doing so great, why'd you have any? Because I didn't want a lifetime of wondering, like, is this fear or this taboo that I can never go there? And if I touch it, like my life will fall apart. And so with an experimental approach, which I think is the most beneficial to anybody, is to approach it with an experiment. I said, let me see what happens. And well, guess
yeah,
what? I didn't go back to drinking every night, and it wasn't a thing. And I proved to myself that I can trust myself, and to
yeah.
me that was important.
We covered a lot. We covered habits, journaling. I promise you I'll try it. You can text me to follow up with me. Labels, mindset, fitness. I feel like we hit on a lot of things, but is there anything or is there a thing that you would share with somebody that maybe's considering making a change in their life?
And so I have a lot of literature on this, but I've been playing with a new thing that I called the reset. And so I'm going to run through it for the first time here with you, if
Let's
that
do
sounds
it.
good. All
Love
right.
it.
So the first one is R, which it stands for run it as an experiment. This really, I think if you take an experiment mindset, that it takes the pressure off. Everybody's like, I don't want to quit drinking, but I really would like to take a break. Well, run it as an experiment. Like, take 30 days off, take 90 days off. And if it doesn't work for you, just go right back to where you were. Like,
Mm.
see what you learn. Like, you are not committing to like forever or anything. So run it like an experiment. Next would be, this is an impactful exercise. So E is envision where you're headed. So I think it's, you take a time machine and you sit in your head and you say, if I changed my drinking the way I want it to be right now, think of what would happen in 1 year, then 5 years. Maybe you're doing mountain bike races, like I said, or maybe in 10 years, maybe like you're making more money than you ever did. You have the best relationship, your family is united, you're spiritual, all these things, whatever's important to you. Now do it for the other way.
Mm.
If nothing changed about your drinking or it got worse, what in a year would that look like? How's your job in
That's
5 years?
powerful.
How's your health in 10 years? Are you maybe having hard conversations with your doctor? And maybe, is everybody in your family still united? Like, think
Mm.
about like the worst case scenario that you do not want to happen, and keep both those images as motivators to either don't do something or to stick with something. Next would be S. So start with just one small step. And it doesn't have to be like, tomorrow I'm quitting drinking. Why don't you just like say, tomorrow I'm going to start drinking an hour later so that I don't drink as much as I normally do. Or maybe, like, I always drink a 6-pack, maybe just drink 5 that night. Like, whatever small step that you think is uh, manageable and something that can get you started, because you really just want these small wins. Try that and run it like an experiment. If it doesn't
Mhm.
work, look back and be like, well, if it didn't work, what can I do to change that, and try it again. Next would be E, equip yourself for urges. So you need to pre-plan when urges come up. Like, I'm going to break my commitment. I'm going to have that 6 beer, whatever it is. Like, you need to have things like, okay, I'm usually come home from work and go straight to the fridge and grab a beer. Well, come home and go for a walk. Come home and call a
Oh.
friend. Put an awesome TV show that always makes you laugh. Like,
How about
whatever it
don't
is.
have the beers? Don't have the beers in the fridge.
don't have the beers in the fridge. Exactly. Like
Yeah.
you need to plan ahead. Like
Yeah.
don't rely on your tired mind that's also going through mini withdrawal because it's pushing like all the different chemicals in your body to seek relief and pleasure, which also lends itself to equip yourself with supplements. And just be ready for them because they will come. And then the final one I have is treat slip ups as data, because everybody tends to wake up and beat themselves up, and that shame that you talked about. And you need to stop doing that because number one, it feels terrible for yourself, but then also it has no result. And so one of the ways that I stop shame is once I feel the shame and it's coming on, I ask myself, is this serving me right now? Because if it's not serving you, which it isn't, then you need to stop those thoughts and instead look at it as an opportunity like, thank you, I'm awake today. I'm going to try again tomorrow or today. And I'm going to look back at these data points of like, what can I do different today so that I can probably run this experiment and maybe have success tonight or tomorrow or whenever it is.
I love it. You heard it first on Running Free. Run it, envision it, small steps, equip yourself, and treat slip-ups like data. To get that right?
That's right.
I love it. Reset, everybody. That's awesome, man. I love it. Hey, look, dude, this has been great. It's been absolutely phenomenal. I wish you absolutely the best with Cloud9. I think it's an amazing company. I'm going to put the link in this episode description. I'm probably going to put Reset down in the episode description too.
Yeah.
And I'll link to all the places, man. But this was an absolutely phenomenal conversation. I really appreciate you.
Well, thank you. And in the traditional Reset, like if anybody wants to use the code Reset, I'll toss in 20% off if they want to go check it out. So
I like it. Awesome, man. We'll have to get our families together up here in the beautiful state of Colorado.
Oh, yeah, we're doing it for sure.
Let's do it. Mike Hardenbrook, everybody. All right, everybody. That's the show, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in to this podcast and spending some time with us today. We've got a favor to ask. If you enjoyed the show, would you please consider subscribing to the show and even leaving a rating and review? That simple act drastically helps us reach more people in our mission to help them live better, longer, healthier lives. You can also follow us if you'd like on Instagram and YouTube for regular tips and motivation around mental health, addiction, and so much more. Know that your support fuels our brand and is greatly appreciated. So until next time, stay strong and live deep.